What I am about to say is going to sound very familiar or should sound very familiar to a number of you, and that is, where have they come from, what are they doing, and where are they going?
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. I'm Jay Catch, executive producer of the KSL Sports Zone and a 13-year credentialed media member at BYU. I am your resident BYU expert and insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And as always, thank you to all of you who are everydayers right here on your original daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Get started today with FanDuel and get up to $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Head over to FanDuel.com to get started today. Coming up on today's show, we're talking about BYU and how in the world they've gotten to where they're at in the college sports universe. Then we're going to talk about BYU basketball. They're going to travel a lot this coming season. If you have plans to travel with them, get ready to pony up some money or have a lot of Sky Miles stocked up. And we'll finish up today's show with two groups of BYU athletes taking BYU's adage of the world is our campus to heart as they head out on some international trips. All right, let's start off today's show talking about BYU. Now, this is something I have been pondering. It's not been asked of me. It's literally a thought that popped into my head about 2 weeks ago, and I've been mulling it over all that time. And I think I'm finally able to lift the lid on it. And what it is how in the world did BYU get here? And what I mean by here is look at what BYU Athletics is doing right now in the athletics universe that are revolving around college sports. They are considered to be, if you're a certain Big 12 program or programs, like a team that you just don't want to deal with because they're, quote, tampering, or they are a team that has brought every resource to bear to make sure that they are a fixture when it comes to recruiting and obviously able to go out there and recruit at a national level. There is so much going for BYU right now that as I've been thinking about it, I just keep wondering, how in the world did BYU get to this point? And the more I think about it, it extends back all the way to 1972. And what happened in 1972? LaVell Edwards was hired as BYU football head coach. In the 50-plus years since then, LaVell's influence and the dynamic and the change and the shift he created with the BYU Athletics department has been monumental. Obviously, a national title in 1984, and then the repeated the repeated efforts to get into the Power 5 ranks, whether it was the Pac-10 at the time. We're trying to get into the old Southwest Conference when they were trying to create the Big 8 and all that different jazz in the 1990s. There's been so much change in and around BYU in all that time, but really, if you want to narrow in even closer, look at just the last 10 years for the BYU football program. 10 years ago, or 10 plus years ago, Bronco Mendenhall decided that he was fed up with BYU being an independent, was not willing to continue leading the BYU football program, and exited stage right and took his talents and his staff to Virginia. He's obviously gone on to have a lot of success. In stepped Kalani Sitake as the BYU football program's new head coach. And Kalani, simply put, is a BYU guy. He grew up a fan of the university, had the honor and privilege of playing for the late LaVell Edwards, and ultimately aspired and dreamed of becoming the head coach at his alma mater, which he's been capable of doing. It's not been sunshine and rainbows all the way around Kalani. He's learned a lot of hard lessons as he's been head coach. He's had 2 losing seasons. He's also had a lot of 10-plus winning seasons as BYU's head coach. But he's been a guy who's been a steady force for the BYU football program. That brings me to the 2020 season. Remember, BYU, amidst that global pandemic, when it seemed like a number of conferences out there were downright apprehensive about potentially even playing college football games, BYU, as an independent at the time, said, you know what? We are going to make sure we consult with all the people we need to consult with, whether it was politicians, whether it was medical professionals. They wanted to find the safest way forward to have a chance to play college football and be able to play as many games as possible. And they pulled off a pretty incredible season, all things considered. No, the schedule was not elite. No, the opposition was not the who's who of college football. But BYU made a name for themselves that season. I think it has clung in a lot of people's minds because of their willingness to forge ahead when a lot of other people were like, nope, we're not going to do it. Then you see BYU ultimately get the invite to the Big 12 Conference, which finally affixed the Power 5 label next to their name. Now, that has since changed to the Power 4 level with the downfall of the Pac-12. But BYU, for years, as an independent, tried to play what we like to call Power 5 adjacent football. They tried to schedule as tough of a slate of games as they could muster, and they tried to recruit the top-level athletes out there when it came to BYU football and basketball. There were a lot of athletes, simply put, that when BYU came into their living room and said, I appreciate you stopping by, but I want to go play Power 5 football or basketball or whatever other sport it may have been. And that really hurt BYU's chances. Yes, there were athletes that looked past that and obviously wanted to play for a school that represented their faith if they were members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or they thought that BYU had a swashbuckling style, almost an ability to go across the country and play anybody, anytime, anywhere. All that led obviously to BYU being where they're at today. Then we saw the influx or the new era of college football come about with both the transfer portal coming into effect as well as name, image, and likeness, compensation for athletes directly from boosters, companies, and even now the universities themselves will soon be revenue sharing with their athletes. BYU, throughout all this time, has remained open-minded. They have obviously tried to make sure they're on the forefront when it comes to adapting these new things, when it comes to NIL, the transfer portal. As I mentioned, revenue share upcoming. BYU will pay the full revenue share allotment of $20.5 million. They're going to abide by whatever the House settlement that is still not settled. Once that's locked in, BYU will abide by it. There's ultimately a dream, I think, for some of the power players in college sports out there, particularly college football power players, to create a power league, whether it's got 40, 50, 60, whatever number of teams it is. I believe that BYU, where they're going, is they fully intend on being a part of that new power level of college football, if at all possible. Could things shift around them and ultimately preclude them from being in that? Sure, it very well could happen. But I think BYU, everything that they have done to this point, and that goes to guys like Kalani Sitake as BYU football head coach, Kevin Young as BYU men's basketball coach. You look at Tom Hummel, 20 years as BYU's athletic director. Tom could have easily said, you know what, we've done things of the BYU way for so long, we're going to keep doing them that way. And that would have absolutely hampered BYU in this era of college sports had he clung to those old ideals. To his everlasting credit, he was innovative, he was open-minded, and he said, you know what, we are going to pivot. We're going to do things strategically to make sure we remain relevant in the college athletic space. Also goes to guys like Shane Reese, who, as the president of Brigham Young University, he has got a sports background, at least a partial sports background, as a sports statistician, doing deep dives on analytics and statistics. He knows what sports can do for a university. And that even goes to the board of trustees with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. All parties involved, it feels like they understand where BYU's been, what it's looking to accomplish right now with the notoriety for some and the acclaim of others for BYU sports, particularly when it comes to recruiting, and the fact that they have embraced boosters and NIL and being able to allow millions upon millions of dollars to flow to these athletes at Brigham Young University. They have opened every door available to them to remain in the national consciousness, and it sure feels like BYU's future, it's going to be a pretty bright one, because so long as BYU continues to innovate and, like I said, keep that open mind and be willing to pivot when needed to make sure that you stay with the times, as it were, BYU is going to be in a really, really good spot. But at the same time, I know that BYU as an institution will not lose sight of its mission, and that is as a sponsored institution of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They will uphold their standards along the way, and they can be a force for good in the world, whether it's the world at large, or in this case, the college athletics universe, which is a little bit smaller, but still plenty large out there as well. So the more I think about this, and maybe I don't have a major point to drive home to you, but I hope that helps explain where BYU's been, what they're doing right now, and why the future, it looks extremely bright for BYU, because I really do think the Cougars are intent on remaining relevant on the national stage for years, if not decades to come, when it comes to college football, college basketball, and the like. All right, coming up next, if you want to travel with the BYU basketball team, and I know a number of you do, you don't want to miss out on as many opportunities to watch AJ DeBonsa and the BYU Cougars play. Well, you better have some money and some cheddar to burn, or you better have a lot of Sky Miles and hotel night points to be able to go watch BYU. We'll explain why next. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Now, the NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances. Swifts and obviously can't miss moments, whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player. There's never been a better time to get in on the action and do it with our friends at FanDuel. It makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live during the games as well. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more opportunities and ways than ever before to play and win big with our friends at FanDuel. Which players are showing up in the biggest moments? Well, you can have fun tracking those and make sure you help build your next bet on that player or players. You also get $200 in bonus bets added to the excitement if your first $5 bet hits. That is the best part about this, my friends. You have an incredible opportunity to cash in right now. So new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet, and if it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Simple as that. There's no catch to it, my friends. Make every moment more and do it with our friends at FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Hope you're having a fantastic Tuesday. If you have not done so already, please continue to subscribe, rate, review, share the show with your family and friends, and help us continue to build this audience. We've had a really good run here in 2025 and not planning on it slowing down anytime soon, even though we're in the 5th month of the year and we are fully in the offseason for BYU football and basketball. The good news is the news keeps flowing in, and that brings us to the BYU basketball program. It was revealed yesterday. John Rothstein from CBS Sports announced the BYU. We already knew they were going to play in this. They're headed to Madison Square Garden for the Jimmy V Classic, which is a one-night affair. It features top teams in college basketball, and they're highly promoted and obviously shown on a national TV audience. Well, BYU found out they're going to play Clemson in that event out there in New York City. That'll be on December 9th, taking on the Tigers. It's a really big opportunity for BYU to make a national name for themselves in Madison Square Garden, which many can proclaim to be the world's most famous arena. Well, that's just one trip BYU's making here in the non-conference slate this coming season. We already know they're going to head to Las Vegas on November 3rd to open the season against Villanova. That is going to be an interesting game because there's a doubleheader with Florida and Arizona that night down there in Vegas. Then BYU's MTE, the mid-season tournament event that they'll participate in, is going to be in Orlando, Florida. They'll be playing 2 of Dayton, Georgetown, or Miami in that event down there in Orlando the week of Thanksgiving. They also have a road trip currently scheduled to go to Wyoming. I would say buy out of that game, but knowing BYU's penchant for making sure that they play nice with their friends in college sports, wouldn't surprise me if they make that trip to Laramie to take on the Wyoming Cowboys. And then yesterday, if you read Robbie McComb's piece, Robbie Bosco would know as well, but he wrote a really good piece talking about that sources have told him that BYU is in talks with several teams about a game in Boston where AJ DeBonsa would be playing in his hometown. There were outlets that reported it was UConn. According to Robbie, BYU is unlikely to play the Huskies in that event. The Huskies are actually going to be part of that doubleheader at Madison Square Garden, the Jimmy V Classic. But he said that BYU has plans to play maybe a team from the ACC, Big East, or the Atlantic 10 out there in Boston. They also want to potentially play a game against a big name opponent like a North Carolina or Michigan in the Delta Center in Salt Lake City. Simply put, if you have plans to track BYU this season and travel with them out on the road in the non-conference slate and watch AJ DeBonsa, Richie Saunders, and the rest of the BYU Cougars play, you are going to be traveling a lot, and you better be able to have access to, like I said, to a lot of travel points, a private jet, or a mixture thereof. It's a big opportunity, and I think that Kevin Young is approaching this the right way. He wants to make sure his team is as prepared as they possibly can be to go into Big 12 play. Remember, he talked about the fact that BYU, with the cream puff schedule and non-conference they had this past year, it really didn't help them when they get started in Big 12 play, and they stumbled out of the gate. Remember, they were 2-4 at one point, 1-3. Ultimately, I think got back to 3-3, and then went on the run that they had as BYU made that run to the Sweet 16. But bit of a false start, and a big part of it, Kevin Young pointed to, was the fact that they got fat and happy playing against overmatched teams. Yes, there will be buy games, as they call them, money games for opponents to come to the Marriott Center in this non-conference slate, but those will be interspersed around these big trips around the country. Kevin Young knows it's going to take his team understanding what it's going to take to succeed at the highest level possible if they want to achieve their goals, and that is to make a Final Four, to win a national championship. Well, guess what? You've got to play the best of the best out there, and the schedule, the non-conference slate so far screams that's exactly what BYU is intending to do. I love the fact that Kevin Young is completely unabashed in saying we will play the best and brightest in college basketball. And yes, BYU will probably lose some of those games. That is just a simple fact of life, because when you play that level of competition, it is going to come with L's on your record. But they are also going to get you more battle tested, more battle hardened. They're going to make the team better overall when it comes to Big 12 play. And most importantly, in March Madness, when the stakes, the pressure, everything gets ratcheted up to a whole another level than it was at any point during the regular season. Kevin Young wants to do some special things at BYU, and he knows he has to have his players ready to respond in many circumstances. Yes, those setbacks they may absorb in the non-conference this year, they will be better for it. Speaking of the BYU basketball program, having gone through those L's, because they'll understand how tough it is to win at the level they want to win at ultimately. It takes work. It takes effort. It takes you giving your all alongside the guys alongside you. And yes, AJ DeBonsa is considered to be one of the premier talents in college basketball this season. Richie Saunders is absolutely awesome. Robert Wright III. I could go down the list of the BYU roster right now. And we saw a highlight video of them yesterday playing basketball against one another in workouts. This is a team that knows that they have got monumental, absolute record type goals for BYU basketball to accomplish this year. And heck, they're going to chase them to the ends of the earth. And that's what it feels like. They're going to travel all across this country. They're going to go to the Eastern time zone 3 times. If they go to Boston, New York City, and Orlando in the non-conference slate, that's 3 trips back to the Eastern time zone. We have heard many times that traveling 2 time zones, it's an issue for programs and for athletes. Well, get used to it, BYU. Ready for those private jets and flying across the country and doing it on very little sleep as you get back into back to campus and get back to class and the like. But I think overall, BYU and Kevin Young have got a good strategic plan here to build out a schedule that will make them as good as they possibly can be, and obviously is going to test them. Kevin Young was not happy. I can vividly remember watching him talk about the non-conference slate last year, and you could tell he was just completely dissatisfied with it. And I completely understand why. This is a guy who came from the NBA, and even the worst teams in the NBA, they've got some dudes on those teams. Simply put, BYU played some teams last year who were absolute dogs. And I don't mean to come off as being rude to some of the buy games BYU had on the schedule last year, but some of those teams, just simply put, did not belong in the same court as BYU. Yes, they're competing at the best level they possibly can. And yes, they're collecting a really healthy check to come and play against BYU. But is it worth having BYU beat your brains in for 40 points? Because do anybody good in those games? I don't think so. It's kind of like the FCS game in college football for me. I think the FCS games are a waste of everybody's time, and they should be moved, whether it's to the end of spring ball or into training camp as a way to get ready for the upcoming season versus being a part of the regular season. It's a waste of a TV product in my mind, no matter if it's streaming or not. It doesn't work out in my mind. And I will 100 times out of 100 take what this non-conference slate for BYU basketball appears it's going to be over what they played the you know what they played last year. I love the fact they're going to play the Villanovas, the Clemsons out there. They're name brands that BYU fans and just lay college basketball fans will recognize. And obviously with AJ DeBonsa leading BYU basketball and his name recognition, there's going to be a lot of people tuned in to watch the BYU basketball program this year. And that's going to be a really, really fun thing to track as a member of the media. And obviously you out there in Cougar Nation as BYU fans. It's a fun season. And like I said, if you're planning on traveling, stock up those hotel room points, stock up your Sky Miles, and get out on the road and start booking your flights right now. It looks like it's going to be a well-traveled BYU basketball season upcoming. All right, coming up next, we're going to talk about some guys who are going to be putting some miles behind them, as it were, when it comes to traveling around the world this month and next month. Two groups of BYU athletes, they are taking the adage of the world is our campus at BYU to heart, and we'll explain what they're doing and why they're doing it next. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Upwork. Now, Upwork's been with us before, but they are back with us. And scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more, experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives your businesses the flexibility by connecting with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. The best part is they'll find you the right talent that you need. If you need help with a marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who can deliver incredible results. Or if you just simply put, need some extra bodies, instead of hiring full-time employees, Upwork helps you find affordable, top-tier freelancers to help you scale the business along the way. So visit Upwork.com and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com, to connect with top talent and grow your business today. Once again, get started today at Upwork.com. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. If you have not done so already, what are you waiting for? Join the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. Get the inside scoop on all things BYU sports, football, basketball, and literally everything in between with us here on the podcast. And it's a great way to support the show as well. It's $5 a month to be a part of the group. But more importantly, you get a 14-day free trial to see if it's the right option for you guys. So if you're interested, click the link in the show notes below or reach out to us where on social media or via email, and we'll get you squared away with the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. All right, before we go on today's show, let's talk a little bit about what BYU athletes are doing this offseason. Now, we knew about this a couple months back, but Jake Retzloff, obviously with his moniker of the BY Jew and the fact that he's got a bunch of endorsement deals with a lot of Jewish NIL opportunities out there. Well, he and his teammates, and they are traveling to Israel this month. I think actually it's happening maybe at the end of this week that they're headed over to Israel, and they're doing it as an outreach and kind of an ambassador program for athletes for Israel. Now, Jake Retzloff, Tanner Wall, Talon Alfrey, Logan Latui, Chase Roberts, Will Farron, and Waylon Lapuaho are the BYU players who are making this trip. This is a really, really cool opportunity because, as we all know, Israel has been in the headlines a lot recently, but I think this is an outreach from BYU, a church-run school, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They have the Jerusalem Center, which was built, I think it was that in the 80s when they built it? I'm going off memory. It might have been the 90s when they finally opened it, but they have had that there, and it's been closed at points due to the political instability and the fighting that keeps going on in the Holy Land over there. But BYU is trying to, I think, make inroads with the fame of Jake Retzloff. It's been really cool to see him embrace everything that goes with being a quarterback at BYU. As many of you know, it's got the moniker of QBU with some of the great quarterbacks of yesteryear for BYU. Well, Jake Retzloff is part of that pantheon, and he has embraced everything that comes with it. He knows that there is outsized expectations. There is incredible pressure being the starting quarterback for the Brigham Young University football program, and he's embraced all of that alongside being a proud member of the Jewish faith. He's not a member of the LDS faith, which is a little bit different, but it's not the first time we've had guys like this. Kevin Federick, if I recall correctly, he was Catholic, if I recall. There's been other quarterbacks, Jim McMahon, et cetera, who were not members of the faith, and they have represented BYU well on the national stage. And Jake is just the latest in doing this. And the fact that he's teaming up with athletes for Israel and taking some of his fellow teammates and fellow team captains, I should insert here as well, over to Israel as a part of an ambassador program and an outreach, I think it's absolutely phenomenal. It's a great way, I think, to build bonds with the Jewish community and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and the community around that. They've been connected for quite some time. There's a lot of things that happen out there in the world that LDS charities and the like have teamed up with a lot of Jewish charities out there. I think this is a really cool thing for BYU itself and BYU football to go out into the world and do some good out there. Now, Not to be outdone, there are BYU basketball players who are also going overseas. That would include the trio of Mawit Mag, obviously formerly of BYU basketball. He's exhausted his eligibility, but he is going to be joining up with Keba Keita as well as Kadim Mboop. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Kadim Mboop. They are headed over to be part of the Africa Elite basketball camps, which will be held next month in both Mboop's native Senegal and Keita's native Mali over there. And they're putting on these camps to kind of train up the next generation of basketball stars. There was a really cool photo. I think it was Dave McCann's article in the Deseret News that showed Richie Saunders back in 2019 reading some kind of a book. And there's Keba Keita sitting next to him. Who knew that all these years later, those two are going to be on the same team and be part of what is expected to be a top 10, if not a top 5 basketball program this coming season? The outreach that's happening here, and like I said, for guys like Mag, Keita, and Mboop, they get to go back to their native Africa and be able to kind of train up the next generation. They were all given incredible opportunities to come over to the United States of America on visas, get top-tier educations, but also play the sport that they love, and that's basketball. There are millions upon millions overseas of kids who have just discovered the sport or are trying to do what those three have done and make good on the opportunity to maybe make it a name for themselves in the basketball community, get an education at a top-tier American university, and maybe make some money along the way in the professional ranks. The nice part is as I mentioned, all of these athletes, I think there's like 9 or 10 of them in all, they're embracing the BYU adage of the world is our campus. I would hope that more BYU athletes look for opportunities to do this, to go internationally and be recognized for what they are. And that is football players or basketball players for Brigham Young University, but at the same time, go out there and do good in the world. I worked for the Larry H. Miller Group of companies for many, many years. I now work for Bonneville after Ryan Smith and the Smith Entertainment Group took over our radio station. But I vividly remember for years upon years, there was a statement inside the Miller family organization. It still exists to this day. And it was Larry H. Miller's statement. It says, go about doing so much good in the world until there's like too much, there's not enough to do. Or I'm butchering the statement. I probably should have Googled it, but it came to mind as I was talking about this. But the thing is, we out there, and I'm speaking just to you as Cougar fans, but also to these athletes, there is a big opportunity to go out there. BYU is recognized internationally. There's just zero doubt about it. No matter what some other fan bases may want to say that BYU is only a regional brand. No, it's an international brand. It has outreach that literally reaches the world. Why? Because of its affiliation with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It's got a very positive image for the most part around the world. And I think the outreach that these BYU basketball and football players are doing, it is commendable. It's awesome. And I wish them nothing but the best as they move forward here, because this is the type of stuff that I love to watch BYU athletes embrace, because it's the way that I think that they can make the most impact they can make. Yes, these are young men who are making hundreds of thousands of dollars in certain circumstances, if not millions of dollars, playing college sports. It's a whole new era of college athletics. But from my vantage point, sitting here in my studio at my house in Saratoga Springs, Utah, these athletes, they haven't lost sight of what it really means to be a college athlete. You have an outsized influence on what could be hundreds of thousands, millions of people out there by going out in the world and doing some good out there and doing some outreach and being an ambassador and showing what BYU sports is all about. So I tip my cap to these young men. They're taking time away from when they could be training, going through practices, hanging out with friends, girlfriends, whatever it may be. They could do a lot of different things out there in the world. And what they have opted to do is to travel overseas to places that are far flung, but they're embracing it. And they're going to go out there and put on a really, really good face and hopefully represent BYU at the highest levels and make a positive impression across the board. So yeah, I tip my cap to Jake Retzlaff for embracing what he can do and obviously involving his teammates. And then obviously guys like Keba Keita and Kadim Mboop, for them to go back to their native countries and put on camps and hopefully kind of open up the doorway for other athletes from their native countries to come over to the United States potentially. That's awesome stuff. So it really is cool to see these BYU athletes embracing everything about what they can do and their fame that they have as well while they're athletes at Brigham Young University. All right, so there you go. That's what I got for you guys on this Tuesday edition of the show. As always, I appreciate all y'all's support. I cannot thank you guys enough for continuing to support. Please rate and review this show. If you haven't subscribed to it, please do that as well, whether you're watching this on YouTube or listening wherever you get your podcast. And make sure you share it with your family and friends and tell them it's daily BYU content available whenever you want it. It's right there for you guys, wherever you get your podcasts. So once again, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And as always, thank you for being everydayers right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.